All right, well, welcome everyone. My name is Joshua Hose, and this is my beautiful wife, Sarah. And thank you for letting us come and share with you guys some principles, some practicals, and a little bit about our life in regards to dating. So being the theme, being anchored, we decided to title our theme Shipmates. And so just to give you a little background about us, we have been in the kingdom for about 17 years. Converted in the campus ministry, and then we were in the singles ministry 10 to about 11 years before we got married. And we've been married now 4 years. And let me show you a picture of our family. So that's our beautiful little girl, Noah. And that's us on the little train they have here in downtown Fort Worth. And we also, to share some good news with you, we also are expecting in March. So, but a little bit about us. So again, like I said, we've been around for about 17 years. So we're going to share with you today a little from our own experience in dating and just our time in the singles ministry. And we're going to share with you both two themes, shipwrecked and smooth sailing. So we're going to share some principles of what are some things that are not so great that either we've done or we've seen when it comes to shipwreck, when it comes to the idea of dating, and then also smooth sailing. And so we're also going to share three different principles today that we're going to hit on. We're going to talk about encouragement dating, which some love that. Hopefully we can really encourage your perspective about encouragement dating. And then the second topic we're going to talk about is building. And then the last we're going to talk about is actual dating. And we're going to give you some practicals to go with that. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to my wife, and we're going to share on our first topic of encouragement dating. Okay, before we get started, I want to lay our foundation for this talk today. And our foundation is going to come out of Philippians 2, 1 through 5. Now, we're going to share a lot of practicals with you today, so it may seem a little overwhelming. Take the practicals that you feel like you can get a hold of, one or two practicals. We're going to share a lot, so if you can jot them down, great. If not, we'll give this to Adam, and if you want it, he can send these out to your ministry leaders. But Philippians 2, 1 through 5, it reads, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus." Okay, I'm going to hand it over to my wife, and we're going to talk about our first topic, which is encouragement dating. Oh, yeah.
Is this working? Okay, so encouragement dating, I think most of us kind of know what that is, right? Where you take out a brother or a sister, not because you're trying to win them over, but just because you want to encourage them. And it is just to have fun and very pure-hearted. And so we're not necessarily going to talk about what encouragement dating should look like specifically, but just some of the principles of what can make encouragement dating go wrong and what can make encouragement dating go really well. So for me, here are some of the things that really hurt shipwrecked my goals in encouragement dating. One was I just had some bitter years. There were times when I really just struggled with where I was at. And, as that scripture talked about, it's do nothing out of selfish ambition, but really consider others above yourselves. And I think when we're in a hard place, the last thing you want to do is encouragement date, and think about other people. The other big thing was I would just make it awkward. I think encouragement dating can seem awkward if really if you're looking at it from like a worldly perspective. If you come from the world and you're a really young Christian, or maybe you just are in a worldly place, and you're looking at how the world dates, and then you look at how we're talking about going out on these dates with somebody that you're not attracted to, with somebody that, you know, but you don't really know that well, and you're meant to go out on a date with them. You know, you can like make it awkward, and you can feel awkward about it. But again, it's not a godly perspective. I mean, Jesus did really awkward things. You know, he invited himself over to people's houses. He he let a woman cry and wash his feet with her tears. You know, I mean, there were just awkward things that happened that he did out of selflessness. And so, you know, I just made it awkward. I think the other thing was I would just question the brothers' motives. You know how, and I don't know what their motives always are. I don't think that our motives are always perfect when it comes to encouragement dating. But you know that attitude where I would feel like he's only asking me out because his ministry leader made him, you know, or his roommate likes my friend, and you know what I mean? And you just, the heart was just very questioning the motives of like, why is he asking me out? Like, or when he is, it's like you just don't trust it. And so that would just shipwreck like the whole date, because my heart wasn't there to really be grateful and give. It was just kind of like, well, I'm going to go because, you know, that's what we do. And so it's just ugly at times.
You know, for the brothers, I'm going to share from some of my bad experience, things that I did, bad decisions that I made early in the singles ministry, even campus, when it came to encouragement date. Because it sounds kind of weird because it's completely opposite of the world. But just like Sarah said, Jesus was completely opposite of the world, right? Everything he did was so opposite that it would anger, right, the Pharisees and the religious leaders to the point of obviously killing him. So things that we're going to do are going to seem weird, but when you put it in the lens of Christ, then it makes sense. And it is going to draw the attention of those around you. One of the things, though, that I did that wasn't right was taking the same sisters out all the time. So I don't know if any other brothers are guilty of that, but I was guilty of taking some of the same sisters that I had the same interest in, and I was taking those through. And I really wasn't encouraging and loving all the sisters. So that was a great way to shipwreck relationships, plus even the opportunity of moving forward in dating. I think the other one is not planning, right? You know, brothers, we can't wing a date, right? So we can't just wing it, right? We need to invest the time and plan. But sometimes that's what I did. It wasn't so much in the idea of what I wanted to do for the date, but it was taking too much time to ask ahead of time, to give the sisters time to actually prepare and allow their heart to prepare for the date, right? And we don't just putting them in this awkward position to have to say yes when you haven't given them time to think it through. And so, brothers, we have to plan and make these encouragement dates great. And again, like Sarah said, just to hit on what she said, it's not about whether or not you're attracted to this sister or not. It's, do you want to lift and encourage your sisters? Do you want to get to know them? Because the reality is, brothers, if we're not encouraging them, someone's going to. And if we don't encourage them, then somebody in the world's going to encourage our sisters and win their heart. And I'll say for us, brothers, our job is to protect the sisters. All right? We're steering this ship. That's our job. And we need to lead out. But those are some things so you know how to not shipwreck.
Okay, so as far as smooth sailing, the times when encouragement dating was the best for me was when I could care less about their motives. I mean, I literally, one time, and even when Josh asked me out, I just had a conversation with Connie Mancini, who's our women's ministry leader. And Connie's like, Sarah, when's the last time you went on a date? And I was like, I don't know, 9 months, something like that. But, I mean, that's nothing. You know, when you've been in the kingdom for as long as I had at that point, 12 years, you know, you're like, what's 9 months? You know, it's really not that big a deal. And I mean, you know, you got God. You know, you're like secure in your faith. So, I mean, there's times when I would go on tons of encouragement dates. And there were times when there just weren't a lot of encouragement dates going on. And, you know, but I was fine with that. But not really. I mean, I wanted to get married. So either way, Connie was like, when's the last time you went on an encouragement date? And I was like, 9 months. And then literally like 30 minutes later, 2 brothers came up and asked me on a date. And I know it was because Connie Mancini went and told them, hey, you should take Sarah on a date, you know? And so, but honestly, again, I was just at a point where I was like, I don't care why they're doing it. I'm just going to go and have fun. And who cares, you know? And I think that was the best dates I had. And honestly, those were 2 of the most fun dates I've ever had. One was with just a brother that was just a friend. He ended up being a good friend. I mean, we laughed the entire date. It was one of the most fun dates I'd ever had. And the other one was Josh, you know. He had asked me out. And
I'm glad I got one good one in there.
yeah. And he wouldn't have if Connie didn't tell him to come and talk to me, you know. And so, I mean, who cares why they're doing it? Just roll with it. Have fun, you know. I think the other thing was when I had really low expectations, you know. It's like sometimes they are going to wing it. I'm not saying it's right, but who cares? You know what I mean? Like, just go and have fun. Like, I think whenever we have these high expectations of, like I've heard people complain because a brother sent out an encouraging text, and he sent the same text to all the sisters in the Bible talk. And it's like, he didn't even think about what he was going to send to me. He just wrote one text and then copied it and pasted it and sent it to all the sisters. And I'm like, girl, he didn't even have to think about you at all. Like I've never had a brother in my Bible talk send me an encouraging text. Did you know? Like, never, you know? And so, I mean, I think that's where sometimes our expectations can get really high for the brothers. And it's like, I'm not saying that it gives you guys, the guys, the free.
Yes, brother. Thank you for lowering the expectations.
Yeah, no. Like, the brothers should still try, but I'm just saying, like, it's so much more encouraging when your expectations are realistic and you know, reasonable. And it's just show tons of gratitude. You know, show tons and tons of gratitude.
So we're going to share some, with the smooth sailing, I'm going to share some practicals and tie it in together for encouragement dating. The first one is have accountability partners when it comes to encouragement dating. Like, have somebody, I know brothers, it's like you want to have the right heart to just go ahead and be going on consistent encouragement dates. But even having other brothers in your life, even asking you if you're going on encouragement dates. Because this doesn't happen where a sister goes 9 months without having gone on a date. I mean, that should not happen. Because we, as brothers, need to lead out and go on these encouragement dates to be there to, it's good for our heart and it's great for the sister's heart. And we get to know our sisters. Because the reality is, brothers and sisters, you're not getting to know each other at church. You're not. Because honestly, you're not there to get to know each other at church. You're there to worship God, right? So the way that we get to know each other in our busy schedules, because most of us were all in here working, that's how you do it, is to go on these encouragement dates. And it gives you a chance to go to another layer of getting to know your sisters.
Can I add to that?
Yep.
So I think encouragement dating is kind of like working out. Like, it's really good for you, but nobody really wants to, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like happy you did it after you did it, but it's so hard to get it started, you know? And it takes a lot of effort and self-denial and planning. And then you got to, like, coordinate. And it's just, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's such a good thing. And I just think the reality is if you don't have somebody holding you accountable to, like, how's your dating life going? Like, it's just, months will go by and you won't do it. And it's not because you're wicked. And it's not because you're selfish or lazy. It just happens, you know? I mean, there's some people who are really, really good at this, and then there's the majority of us who aren't selfless and thinking about dating and encouraging others for no reason but just to encourage others, you know? And so I can't stress enough, like, find somebody who's, and this is especially for the guys, to, like, buddy with, to make sure that this stuff is happening, you know, to encourage one another.
You know, for the brothers, I want to call you to the level that the sisters are saying that brother is encouraging. Yeah. Like that you're known for being a brother for encouragement. That you're known for that. Not that, whoa, I've never seen that brother go on a date, you know, or we want to be out of ourselves. And if your goal one day is to be dating and get married, you got to go on dates to do that, you know, so... the next one is plan well, brothers. I share this with you because I hear from some brothers the excuse of money, which is on this list as well. I don't have money, I can't do that. Well, it's not about the money, it's about your planning. Because you can still have an excellent date even if you don't have a lot of money. It just takes you spending and investing the time and planning out well. And here, we're in the day and age where we have the internet. where you can pull up any and all kinds of dating ideas. I mean, there's websites and websites of all kinds of great date ideas for double dates, and whether you're in the park or anywhere you go. So don't let money be an excuse, and plan well, brothers.
I think the last one, I mean, we talked about don't take out the same people all the time. Like, I think one of the most impressive things whenever we were building was that there was a sister who was a young Christian, and she'd never been on a date before. And Josh had shared with me that he really wanted to take her on a date because she felt comfortable with him, and he wanted her to feel comfortable on her first date in the kingdom. And I was like, you know, it's kind of weird, but you're like, man, that's so attractive that you want to take out this other person, you know? It's so attractive that you love my sisters, you know? And so I think sometimes brothers, you know, the temptation is to only go out with the girls that you feel comfortable with. But it was such an act of self-denial. And she's a sweet, fun girl, you know? But it was just so encouraging that he was thinking of my sisters. So I think definitely don't think that the sisters don't notice when you love all the sisters. You know, it's really attractive when you love all the sisters like sisters. And then the last one is show appreciation. Just be grateful. Be super grateful during the date. Like, even if you're not having fun, you know, like, even if it's weird, it doesn't matter, you know, it's like, just be super grateful and show, you know, give a thank you card, like, be grateful afterwards. And this is where you can be held accountable. Like, if you on a date, like, if you know a sister went on a date, so what did you do to thank him? Did you give him a thank you card? Did you bake him cookies? Something, it didn't have to be big. I'm not saying like some grand gesture, just something small. And that spurs the brothers on to keep taking.
Yeah,
sisters.
I was going to say, sisters, it's not that you have to give something to the brothers. By no means. The brothers should be doing it because they love you and they want to honor you. But man, does it go a long way? It shows that, man, I did take notice. I really do appreciate that, yeah, you took me on a date. You don't know me, you know, but you wanted to get to know me. And, you know, to tap back on one of the things we talked about earlier about motives, you know what, sometimes the brothers' motives aren't right, you know, and it is what it is. We have to pray before we go on dates because we do want to get our heart to the right place, right? That's both for the brothers and the sisters, right? Let's pray so that we can be very giving when it comes to this time together so that I can honor God with this date. So our next topic, though, that we're going to touch on is building. Again, shipwreck versus smooth sailing. I'm going to let Sarah start us off on shipwreck.
Okay, so I think one of the biggest mistakes I made whenever I was trying to build with a guy was basically dating him in my head. And we'd been on like maybe one encouragement day. He called me maybe twice. And I'm just smitten. And I'm like planning our future together. And this can go on for months, maybe as long as a year. Where you think that this is going to happen and you really go there in your heart. And I mean, you know, the guy really isn't pursuing you, but he might be because he talked to you on Sunday for like an extra 10 minutes. And then like he texted all the sisters in the Bible talk, but you got a text and yours was a little bit different. And, you know, it's kind of like the opposite of the text from earlier. And so it's like creating this relationship in your mind. And it's not real, you know, it's not real. And I mean, nobody wants to admit it, but I mean, I've done it like hardcore. And then,
I see the sisters laughing, but brothers, you know what? We're guilty of it too.
Yeah.
You know, we're guilty of a sister gave us a little more time in this conversation. We feel like, oh, she's digging me. She likes me.
Yeah. Yeah.
She laughed at my joke.
Yeah. She laughed at me. Yeah. I think the other one is when you're just friends, but like you want to be more than friends, but you don't tell them you want to be more than friends. You just become best friends. Or I guess this is kind of a fuzzy one. I've seen brothers and sisters, especially in the last like, I don't know, 5-10 years, like get really close, but there's no interest. But it's very rare when there's no interest on either side. There's always one person who is interested. And they just hope that maybe the friendship will turn into something more. And what ends up happening is like the guy gets his heart broke or the girl gets her heart broke when that person starts dating someone else. And I just think it's a very shifty territory because if you're best friends with the opposite sex, they should be your boyfriend. And if you're best friend, if you're a guy and your best friend is a girl, you should date her. She's your best friend. Like that's what a marriage is for. That's what a husband and wife are for, is to be best friends together. But if you're best friends with them and they're not dating material for you, then you need to let them go be best friends with someone else. Because it's building a deep bond with someone that you're not in a committed relationship with. And so that deep bond gets broke the moment the other person starts dating. Does that make sense? I really question when I see brothers and sisters that are super tight, but like they won't date. And I'm like, why? If you're so when we were building, for example, we became really good friends. And it got to the point where I was like, well, you're either going to ask me to date you or you need to stop calling me. Like, we're not going to be friends like this. I'm not going to be your best friend. I've got friends. And that was my saying when I was single. I was like, I've got friends. I don't need friends. Like, I need a husband. And so if we're not going to, go to the next step, you can go make friends with another sister that you will date. And luckily he did like me and he asked me. But I mean, and then.
But I think and I'll hit on this because I think it's very true. And I'll talk about Shipwreck because before, I had an interest in Sarah, there was a few other sisters that I had an interest in as I was just starting to get to know Sarah. And I had, sadly to say, I had ended up leading one of the sisters on because I thought I really liked her. I wanted to like her, but I wasn't sold that I want to be, I really want to date this sister. So by doing that and giving her a lot of attention, I led this sister on to believe that this was going to go somewhere. And it really went for a long time, like 11 months or so, that I just was oblivious to, that I was just leading her on because I kept giving her a lot of attention and I thought I really was interested. But I agree with Sarah. If you don't know, I don't know means no. Either you do or you don't, right? That's the purpose of, honestly, brothers and sisters, that's the purpose of dating. Dating is to get to know whether or not this is going to work out. But that time beforehand, I think for us as guys, and I believe this is true for a lot of guys, is we give our hearts over super fast. Like we go on a date and boom, here's our heart. We lay it out there for you. And this sister just went on a date with us, She has no idea, She doesn't even know our birthday, but we've already given her our heart, And so that's one of the things that we got to be careful of, men. But I think, brothers or sisters, is giving your heart over way too early before you ever know there's a mutual interest. Because you could give it over and just be getting to know them and you feel like it's going somewhere, but there really isn't a mutual interest on the other side. And a lot of that comes back to seeking advice, right? Are we getting advice? If you're not getting advice, you're going to shipwreck. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not getting advice from somebody that's in their life on input on where this possibly could be going, could this be heading towards dating and further on, then it's going to shipwreck because you didn't get input. So.
I think the last one on shipwreck for that is, it goes along with the friends thing, but this time the friendship, you are best friends, you are mutually interested, you just won't date yet. And so what you end up doing is what I call pre-dating. And so you're basically dating, you just haven't made it Facebook official yet. You just hadn't had the grand announcement and the engagement type asking yet, but everybody knows you're a couple. You know what I'm talking about? Those people that they're a couple, but they're not actually a couple yet. You're exclusive, but you won't admit it, but in your heart you're exclusive. And what it does is, it's like you end up dating when you're actually just building. And then when you do start dating, you feel like you're engaged. Because you decided you want to marry this person before you started dating, So then when you're building, you're dating. Whenever you're dating, you're basically engaged. And then once you actually get engaged, it's so hard to be pure. Because in your heart, you're married.
Yeah.
And it's so...
You've already gone there.
Yeah.
You're so far ahead.
I think this is the biggest reason that staying pure before marriage is so hard now in the kingdom. When before, and I'll just be honest with you, I feel like it's so much more common to hear about couples crossing boundaries now and falling into sin because this happens. You pre-date and then you get so ahead of yourselves when it should be so pure and innocent and so brother, sister when you're building.
So let's talk about some practicals, because it kind of ties in with what Sarah is saying. Having boundaries before you start pursuing, right? What does that mean, having boundaries? Well, for us as men, we have what we call, I want to get to know this sister, but where am I even at with God, right? Am I even in a good place with God? My advice to brothers who want to date, who are interested in dating, how's your purity? Because brothers, if your purity is not in a good place, I don't advise you to pursue dating. Because you already are tripping up before you date. Do you think it's just going to get easier when you start dating? It's actually only going to get harder. So one of those boundaries, even for myself, was I wasn't going to, really pursue and start dating Sarah unless my purity was in a good place. Because it really wasn't fair to her that I wouldn't really truly be able to protect her. Because I wasn't even protecting my own relationship with God because of my own purity.
The next one is just seek input even on the small things. I think a lot of times, especially in the singles ministry, you have a mix of people that are 23 and 53. And some of you have been disciples only a few years. Some of you have been around forever, it feels like, And so you feel like you've been to like 20 dating devos, so you know exactly what you're doing. And it's easy to just start assuming like I got this on the small things. And that's something I really appreciated about our dating relationship was Josh wouldn't do anything without asking input. I mean, to me, it was like a struggle. I'm like, oh, please. Like we had been dating for 6 months and we had never gone on a date, just the two of us. We always had a double. I know that's not super popular as it used to be. I think now it's very common for couples to go on dates, just the two of you, but that's something we decided we weren't going to do because why? There's nothing we're going to discuss our experience that somebody else can't witness. So there's nothing to hide. Why not bring somebody along, There's nothing that's going to happen in our relationship that other people can't see. But for my birthday, we wanted to go to the zoo. And Josh, we called Mark Mancini to get input before we went on our first date where it was just going to be the two of us. The only reason was we just didn't find another couple. And we really wanted to go out for my birthday, So 6 months together, our first date where it was just the two of us, and he got input from like a couple of people and an evangelist, before he did it. And so that seems small, but that made me feel so protected, and again, that kind of goes into the dating part, but I think even in just building, like getting input on even the small things, like don't just assume you got this at any point,
Mm-hmm. I have up there, have time with God before with each other, right? And this is because we give our hearts away, we're trying to get to know, we're more excited about that phone call to talk to that other person than we are about opening our Bible. Right? And so, man, how do you think God feels now in this relationship? When he's supposed to be number one, but we're more fired up to get this text or play this game with them or phone call than we are with God, right? So my practical to you is if you truly want God to honor this whole process, whatever you want to call it, from encouragement dating, building, dating, then God has to be number one. It's really, I'm sure you've heard it a million times, but God has to be number one. I feel like that is the number one thing that helped our relationship, that I feel like God truly honored and blessed, was that I wasn't going to spend time with Sarah. I wasn't going to call Sarah. I wasn't going to talk with Sarah if I hadn't had a quiet time. Because it just wasn't fair to God. And if I want God to open my eyes, protect my heart, then he's got to be there for him to do it. And I didn't want to push him out of the way.
The last one we've already talked about, don't be besties with the opposite sex unless you're dating. You know, I mean, some of you probably already have a bestie right now, and I'm just saying, pray a lot about that. Get some input and advice about that. Like, really examine where your heart's at. I'm not going to say that, you know, it's impossible. There's exceptions to everything. But the reality is, most of us are not the exception. Most of us are the rule. And that's why it's the rule. But everybody thinks they're the exception to the rule. That's the sad part. So, you know, my encouragement is really examine your relationship. If you're like best friends with the opposite sex, examine where it's at and why it's there. You know, and get some input on where it's going.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the next topic, which is our last topic, which is the actual dating. And shipwreck versus smooth sailing. I'll let Sarah share first.
Okay, so I actually dated 3 times before I dated Josh. He was my 4th boyfriend in the kingdom, which it sounds like a lot, but, you know, when you've been a disciple for, I think we were disciples like 11, 12 years before we got together. That's only like 1 every 2 years. It's not too bad. But, you know, so I've had a lot of experience with what not to do in dating. And one of them was just talking about the future. You know, it's like there are certain times and places for discussions about the future, but I think if you're going to do that, get a lot of input before you do. I know some couples start talking about the future when they're just building, you know, and you're just like, you start talking about when you start dating, and it's like, I don't know, you're just building yourself up for heartache, honestly, because it creates a bond that can just be created way too soon. And I'm not to say that we're not adults and you can't have an adult conversation. You don't have to go through a discipler for everything. But if you're going to have a conversation, get tons of input. Don't just willy-nilly talk about, oh, well, when we get married, you know, blah, 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 blah. Or, hey, you know, how do you think your family would feel about, you know, an interracial couple being married in your family? You know, and it's just, that's weird, you know. It's like, don't have those conversations, you know. It's just, I think we just assume it a lot, like that should be happening. And then really, I just think if you feel like that conversation really needs to be get a lot of input first. I think the other one is and this is for the ladies, don't just assume that the guy you're with is getting advice. You know, now,
that's a good one.
Here's the other one. Don't just assume he's getting advice from the right people, you know, because I've had brothers be like, oh, I got a lot of advice about this, and they got it from, like, somebody they should not be getting advice from. And then you're just like, you know, but you don't want to feel like you're questioning them. But I think it's a very fair conversation. Like, so who do you get advice from? Like, where does that come from?
It's a fair question.
It's super fair.
If you don't feel, sisters, that you can ask the brother that you're dating who he's getting advice from, then you shouldn't be dating them.
Yeah, if he's that insecure about where he's getting his input, like, there's something wrong. And then if he's just like, whoa, I didn't really, you know, if he's like, hey, let's go to the zoo, just the 2 of us. Well, should we get advice about that? He may be like, oh, yeah, I already got advice about that. Who'd you get advice from? You know, I mean, I know that it can seem weird, but I think you'll get to a point where you're really, if you know he's getting advice from the right people, you don't have to have this conversation, you know. But you need to know, and you need to check up periodically and make sure this guy's actually getting input from the right people. And because, I mean, again, I just kind of assumed. I mean, I dated a guy once. We did so many stupid things. Like, we'd have, like, and we'll talk about this later, too, marathon dates, you know, like those 10-hour dates. Like, we talk on the phone for, like, 4 or 5 hours at a time. Yeah, it was, like, so many things that, like, it was just not wise, you know. We'd go out, just the 2 of us, and hang out. And it was because I just assumed, because of a position he was within the church, that he was getting advice. I just assumed, you know, he had all these really spiritual men in his life. And the reality is nobody was giving advice to do these things. And I found that out later. And the last one is sticking out when it's just not working. I think sometimes we feel like we just want the first one to be it. You want the second one, you really want the second one to be it. You really want the third one to be it, you know? And so it just increases, and that commitment to somebody who it isn't a good fit is like, it's there, but it doesn't have to be there, you know? Dating is just dating. It's not pre-marriage.
It's not.
So if it's not working and it's not spiritual,
it's okay.
Seek a lot of advice and break it off, you know? I think the other one is, I think when women are especially likely to do this, if you do cross boundaries, and you do end up being physical with this guy, even if it's just making out or kissing or something, you feel so bonded with him, even if it is a train wreck, you're going to try and make it work because you cross that line. And if you get married, it's all okay. There's some weird like psychology that goes on where it's like if we mess up, now we got to get married. Now we have to make it work. And that's exactly the reason why you probably shouldn't marry him. And so it's this really tough place to be. But I just think don't hold on when it's not good. It's okay to break up in the kingdom. It's okay.
Yeah, I think Sarah hit on a lot of things. One of the ways you can shipwreck is staying out late with each other. You say, well, we went to the movies, and then we had to go and do this. And before you know it, brothers, we're taking the sisters home at 1 or 2 in the morning. Brothers, that shouldn't be happening. And even talking super late into the night. My rule of thumb was I for sure wouldn't talk to Sarah for sure any later than 11. But even for us, I think it was even 10. But I would say no later than that. Honestly, at that late at night, our guard is down. And that's when we start saying things that we probably shouldn't be saying. Because we're in a relaxed position and we're really not being focused on how can I protect this sister's heart. So we share these future things. We hit these little remarks that are in the future that we're not to that pace in our relationship yet. So protect them. And then again, one of the things to shipwreck, I was when it came to our boundaries, very specific when it came to our purity, right? And this is where I think, brothers, we have to build conviction on when it comes to purity. To the point where when I came to visit Sarah, it was raining outside, but I wouldn't go into her apartment. I wouldn't go in alone with her. And that may seem kind of extreme, like, bro, it's okay, it's raining. But it's like, no. And the reason I wouldn't do it is because Sarah lived in this apartment complex. It was right next to UTA. And those are the people I wanted to reach out to. So if those people see me go into her apartment and shut the door, they don't know what's going on in there. Even if nothing happened in that apartment, they can automatically go to the point of that we were messing around. We were doing something impure. So how credible am I when I'm going to share my faith with them to help them close to God when they know I'm doing something with my girlfriend? So I wanted to honor God with that. So those are a few things that I wanted to share about shipwreck. Smooth sailing, I think because it kind of ties in together, it's the same way. I wanted to protect our purity so much. I had a deep conviction when it came to areas of purity. Even when I was dropping Sarah off for the date at the end of the night, it wasn't this long, drawn-out, kind of awkward time. Because in that time, you're very tempted to want to kiss them goodnight and send them off. But I wanted to protect our purity. So that was one of the things that I really believe God honored in our relationship.
Yeah, I think for me, because we built well, dating was really easy. When we were building, Josh would call me once a week, and it wasn't like a planned date. It's just whenever he found time. We would rarely talk more than an hour. I mean, we never text messaged each other. Like, never. And so it just wasn't necessary, and we'll kind of touch on that with the practicals. But there wasn't this all-day communication. You know how people just like Snapchat from like morning?
Snapchat, Instagram.
Yeah. I mean,
selfie moments.
The whole like conversation was probably only about 45 minutes, but you made it last like 12 hours because you like replied here and you're at work, and then you go to the bathroom and you like reply here, and then you're like talking all day long. And so we just never did that. It was like, he called it, wait, I missed a call from Josh, let me call him back. And we would talk maybe an hour or so. And then we only went on maybe 5 dates before we started dating. Mm-hmm. But we talked for 6 months before we started dating. But we never, again, we paced ourselves really well. And so we were just in a really good place. And so it wasn't overly emotional. It was just simple. We had fun together. So whenever we were dating, it was just an extension of that. We just became best friends. Mm-hmm. We weren't best friends before we started dating. We became best friends after we started dating. We were good friends who liked each other, and then we became best friends when we were dating. And that's how I knew I wanted to marry him. It's because we really became really good friends. And it was, we always had a double. and we just went out and had fun. Now, we did lead a ministry together. And so I do put that out there for like when you're focused on a common mission for the Lord, it's really hard to struggle in your dating relationship. You know, it puts things in perspective. You know, when you're studying the Bible with someone who's dating a guy who's like, you know, dishonoring her purity, who's you know, dating a guy who curses her out, you know, and you get some perspective on the world, and you know, you start remembering that, you know, disciple problems are awesome and compared to the world's problems. And so I just think having a common spiritual purpose that you're focused on, so that you're not we just weren't focused on each other. It wasn't about us, it was about God, and then we were great partners in it together in our dating relationship, you know. And
you know, the reason we kind of did it this way, encouragement dating, building, dating, is if you do those other steps right, when it comes to dating, it does make it easier. And you've already set those kind of boundaries, those kind of stepping stones in your relationship for God to honor and to bless. And I feel like that's what God did, because one of my goals that I had to really change when it came to encouragement dating was, like I said, I had to stop taking the same sisters out. One of the sisters said, "Josh, you're kind of known as the kingdom player." And I was like, what? I'm the kingdom player. So I was like, I don't want that reputation. So I want to encourage all the sisters. I want to get to know my sisters. How can I really build it? So going on as many encouragement dates as I could. And then I think that really prepared me and trained me, you know, during the stage of even getting to know and building to get to know Sarah. Then even in our dating relationship, I think, again, they just built off of each other to obviously our marriage. So, but we're going to share some practicals here to close out here in our topic of dating. I kind of hit on it earlier, but don't be alone in the house. That may seem elementary, but how many cross that boundary? You know, how many cross that boundary and are spending alone time in someone's apartment or house? And you think, well, you know, I'm an older disciple, we're fine. It's like, no, God is still there in the house with you. You know, honor him by that time.
I think that can extend to sitting in the car forever too. You know, like you're sitting together in the car alone for and you get in this deep conversation, and before you know it, you've sat in the car and you've talked for an hour and a half. You're basically in a small room together, a really small, cramped, intimate room together. And so it's kind of the same principle. And I've seen people kind of weasel around this too. Like they won't go in the house together, but they'll sit on the back porch together for hours and no one else is home.
We were outside, so it's fun.
We were outside, yeah. It's like, you know, again, the principle. So don't just box this. Don't get too legalistic about this and use legalism to weasel around it. Use wisdom. The principles should apply to wherever. Don't be in intimate spaces alone together. So.
Yeah. And I think Sarah hit on it earlier about these marathon dates. Brothers, the only reason you should have an extended long date is if you were dating long distance and you don't get to see them. The long distance means you're out of state, not in another region. Right? If you're out of state, yes,
or in a different city really far away, like San Antonio and Dallas, something like that.
Yeah, I get this extended, longer dates because you're not going to get to see them for maybe another 2 weeks, maybe another month. But if you live in the same city or just another region in the same city, you don't need to be going on 6, 7, 8-hour dates. That's uncalled for. It's uncalled for. And we really got to strive to protect. And honestly, it doesn't leave anything else for your other dates, right? It should be special. The other one we want to do is, like I hit on, is not talking late. We don't need to be talking late at night. You know, have a boundary, brothers. Lead out. And when it comes a certain time, 10 or even 11, because I know some of you get off late. You know, some of that conversation can wait for the next day. You know, if you need to share with them. But just when it comes 11, you know, tell them good night. And you can talk to them the next day. But not staying up super late, talking till 2, 3 in the morning. Not good.
Yeah, the next one, I kind of touched on earlier too. So texting is for communicating details. Like, hey, the movie's going to start at 7. Texting is not for, hey, I've just been feeling really, neglected by you lately. that is not what texting is for. And I, having, like, we served in the ministry for 4 years together. And so every single bump I ever experienced with friends, girls and girls, guys and guys, not really guys, I don't really talk to them about that, but girls with their friends or girls with their boyfriends, every single bump was because of texting. Every single one. It was a miscommunication. It was a misunderstanding. So when you're texting, 80% of what should be communicated isn't being communicated. Your tone, your the inflection of your voice, all of that stuff is a huge
Facial
part,
expression.
of communicating. And this is what I would get. Well, he said this, and I was like, well, da 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 da, and they're doing this with their hands, and I was like, wait. Was this over text? Were you doing all of this through text? And they'll show me like these marathon, those texts that are like this long. Like, you're just like, you didn't even know a text could be that long, You're just like, I was like, that's like a short novel, And they're doing this through text messaging. And I'm just like, you should not be having this conversation.
If your text box has to break down,
yeah,
then it's too
long.
much.
It's too much texting. And it's just, and so and it's so common now that it may seem like I'm speaking German whenever I say don't text with each other. But I'm serious, and that includes Snapchat and all that other stuff. I'm not saying all that stuff is bad or wrong, but just be wise. If you have any emotion involved in what you want to communicate, don't do it through text.
Right.
It's not going to be taken correctly.
Well,
it never is.
And it's so impersonal. Texting is so impersonal.
Yeah.
The trend now is that people don't know how to communicate with each other. Not so much, I would say, our generation here, but it's moving that direction because everything is going to social media, text, everything, internet. So we got to get away from that. As brothers and sisters, we need to speak to each other. As the Bible says, speak the truth in love. And you're not going to be able to do that through a text message. One of the other things, that we've been hitting on is get advice. Keep getting advice. If you're not getting advice, then it's not going to go well. But if you're willing to get advice and get input from the right people, from either dating couples that are being successful in their dating life, or even from married couples that you respect the dating life they had as singles. So I say that purposely because there are married couples that were converted as marrieds, but we don't know what their dating life was before they were married. Get advice from couples that did date in the church, in the singles ministry, went on to a marriage that you look at and say, man, I really want to imitate that. I really respect their marriage. Hey, what did you do to encouragement dates? What did you do in building? What did you do as you were dating that I could possibly do? Brothers, get advice. Sisters, get advice.
And I'll just say, I've had a lot of people who have roommates, and maybe the roommates never dated before. And when you're in a dating relationship, sometimes it's hard to take advice from somebody who's never been in a dating relationship because you're like, you don't know. Like you don't know what it's like, and it's like, no, but they see you every day. And if they have concerns, because they have the Holy Spirit, and Jesus never dated, so if you would take advice from Jesus, you can take advice from your spiritual roommate who maybe hasn't dated, but they know you, and they know what you're doing, that your discipler doesn't see, and your, boyfriend's discipler doesn't see, and they're going to see red flags that nobody else is going to see, and you may just have a blind spot. And so I think you got to be humble enough to take, some input. If your roommate has concerns, you need to listen to that concern, and don't just dismiss it because they've never dated. So, you want to get specific input about your dating relationship with people who have had experience, but you don't need to dismiss someone's just because they haven't. So, yeah.
So, in conclusion, just kind of give you a background of us. We built for 6 months. We dated for 11, engaged for
2.5.
2.5. And then now we've been married for a little over 4 years. And I would say God has truly blessed it. Not that we have all the answers, and obviously we've shared with you some stuff that we've done that wasn't right. But I believe, again, if God is the forefront of your relationships, if He's the most important person, you need to be in a good place with God before you try to get in a good place with someone else. Okay, so that needs to be your number one focus, is being right with God. Even going back to the scripture that we shared, right? If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, any comfort from his love, any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit, being one in mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. If that is your focus, and I guarantee you, if that is your focus going into encouragement day, building to get to know someone and dating, God will set you on a smooth sailing, and he will set you up for success because he's number one and you put others above yourself.
And I'll just say one last thing. Have fun. Encouragement dating's fun. It really is. And I mean that. Like, encouragement dating's fun. I would always ask girls. Dating's fun. But I mean, I'd always ask girls whenever they thought they wanted to start dating, I'm like, are you sure? Because, once you start dating him, you can't go out with any of the other brothers. Like, and there's some brothers that are a lot of fun. Like, you may not want to date them, but they're a lot of fun to hang out with, And it's like, once you start dating, you can't go out with him anymore. And so, I mean, and it's like, you should have that kind of attitude where it's like, man, I love hanging out with my brothers. And I'm not talking about the casual, like real dates. And then, once you start building should be fun. If it's really stressful and you're putting this weight on it and you're like, oh, is he the one? And you're just like, I don't know. And you're like wrestling and you're having to like pray all the time. And you're just like, it's like it should be fun. And dating especially, I mean, it should just be fun. And if it gets to the point where it's just constant work and drama, like, and that's just part of my personality. I love to have fun. And if you're not one of those people, then date someone who does love to have fun.
Yeah.
And they'll help you get there. But, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for letting us come and share. Hopefully this was helpful. Please take just a few of the practicals. We know we gave you a ton of them, but just take a few that you can grab a hold of that can really benefit your walk with God and your walk with each other. All right. Thank you, guys.